All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second Hawkeye Lunch and Learn of the semester. Registration is now open for all our fall events, so I encourage you all to visit our Hawkeye Lunch and Learn website up there on the screen for additional information. Today we are excited to welcome Dan Matheson, Director of the University of Iowa Sport and Recreation Management Program and an Associate Professor of Instruction. In 2017, he was named the Dean's Distinguished Lecturer in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. In 2016, he received the university's highest teaching honor, the President and Provost Award for Teaching Excellence. Prior to joining the Iowa faculty, he worked as an NCAA Associate Director of Enforcement and as the New York Yankees Director of Baseball Operations. He is a regular contributing writer on the college athletics issues at collegead.com. Dan graduated from Iowa State University with a Bachelor of Science in Physical Education with a sport management emphasis, and from the University of Minnesota Law School. He was raised here in Iowa City and returned home and joined the Iowa faculty in 2011. Please join me in welcoming him today.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jordan. How's audio? Let's get this situation figured out first. Everybody hear me okay? Maybe I'll move this a little closer for those in the back. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this, Jordan. It's a real honor to take part in something like this that connects the community with campus. And thanks so much to everybody for coming out. This is a real hometown crowd, and I appreciate seeing all the familiar faces. Special thanks to my colleagues who have come out here today. And my dad's even here today, so thanks, Dad, for coming out. Most supportive dad ever. He's never missed anything that I've done. So thank you. What are we going to talk about today? The classroom as a practice field. I'll start. There are three main areas I want to cover. I'm going to talk a little bit about my non-traditional academic career path that has led me here to Iowa and that influences certainly the way that I teach. And I want to spend the majority of my time talking about some of the unique experiential learning opportunities that we provide our students in the Sport and Recreation Management program here at Iowa. And then I want to conclude by talking about how what we're doing in our program might be applied in any program on campus, no matter what subject matter somebody might be teaching in, for improved student outcomes. And if you're not a faculty member, but are interested in supporting the professional development of our students here on campus, I might also suggest some different ways that you can get involved as a community member with experiential learning opportunities here on campus for the benefit of students. So to start by talking a little bit about my professional journey, and it all started thanks, not surprisingly, to an experiential learning opportunity. In my junior year of college, I got the media relations internship for the Chicago Cubs. So you wouldn't know it from this picture up here because that young man has a full head of hair. But that was me back in 1991 at Wrigley Field. And that was a very important part of my educational journey that helped open up a lot of doors for me professionally for obvious reasons. It was a wonderful opportunity for me to apply what I had been learning on campus in a professional setting and in a Major League Baseball front office where I hoped to work down the road. It was also an important experience for me because it helped connect me with influential mentors in my life. One of the mentors who worked closely with me while I was there was the general counsel for the Cubs at the time, Jeff Anderson. And Jeff was one of the main reasons why I ended up going to law school. He helped convince me that even if I didn't think that I wanted to practice law down the road, the skills that I would acquire in law school would be valuable and transferable no matter what I decided to pursue, even if I decided to stay in sports. So with his advice, I finished up at Iowa State and enrolled at University of Minnesota Law School. And while I was there, I had another opportunity to get involved in another experiential learning experience, and that was with the New York Yankees. So during my final semester of law school, I got a spring training internship with the Yankees. And so I went down to Florida and worked for just 1 month in March with the Yankees. And that experience went exceptionally well, and it ended up leading to a job offer. So I graduated from law school a couple months later and moved down to Tampa, Florida. I actually lived in Florida the whole time that I worked for the Yankees, which doesn't seem to make much sense. But that's where our owner, George Steinbrenner, lived. And he was a very hands-on owner and wanted as many of his employees as possible situated nearby so that he could be involved in day-to-day operations. And that's where our player development and scouting facilities were. And that's the division that I worked in most frequently. So I worked for the Yankees in player development and scouting for 6 years. And it was exactly what I wanted to do at that point in my life. As you can imagine, it was my dream job coming out of school. We won the World Series 4 out of the 6 years while I was there. And if I were to describe my job, I would say I was basically responsible for the off-the-field side of the player development and scouting departments. So I managed a lot of the contracts that were signed with our minor league players, their employment relationship with the Yankees. I managed the budget for the player development and scouting divisions. One of the cool things I was involved in when I was there at the Yankees was when Mr. Steinbrenner would convene his group of top baseball executives and scouts to talk about free agent signings or trades for the New York team. He included me in those meetings. And so that was a real thrill to be a part of those talks and that part of Yankee history. In spite of how great things were at the Yankees and how much I enjoyed that and had aspired to do that in my career, I made the decision after 6 years to leave. And that was motivated by a desire to find a better work-life balance. When I was at the Yankees, it was all work and no life. I worked about 355 days a year, every weekend, every holiday, long hours, often stressful conditions. And that was great. That was what I wanted to do at that point in my life, but I didn't foresee myself being satisfied in other aspects of my life if I lived that way for 25 or 30 more years. So that motivated me to move on to the NCAA. I went to work for the NCAA national office in Indianapolis. And I found the work-life balance that I was seeking there and was able to stay involved in sports. And I became Associate Director of Enforcement there. And if I were to try to describe that job, the best way to think of it is it was kind of like being a prosecutor for the NCAA rules. So when you think about major college sports scandals that you read about in the news, like what's going on in Louisville basketball right now, the University of North Carolina academic fraud that's been in the news for the past 5 years, the Reggie Bush case at USC, when something like that would come up, I or one of my colleagues would go out, conduct an investigation that would last many months, and develop a case and supporting evidence in order to present the NCAA's case to the Committee on Infractions. I really enjoyed that process. I spent 9 years doing that with the NCAA, and it was an exciting intellectual challenge. I was frequently working with and against attorneys who were representing schools and coaches, and advocating for the NCAA's position in front of the esteemed members of the Committee on Infractions. It was something that I enjoyed very much. It was applying a different part of my legal training that I hadn't been using at the Yankees. After 9 years, I was starting to become interested in putting down more permanent roots here in Iowa City, coming back to home base. how many people here know Iowa City kids who have gone away for 10, 20 years and come back? I mean, that's a common phenomenon, as I see a lot of my friends moving back as well at this stage of life. So during my last couple of years at the NCAA, I started guest speaking in classes here on campus now and then, and I started mentoring students in the College of Law who were interested in sports careers. And through that process, I discovered that I think at this stage of my career, I enjoy working with young people who want to follow a similar career path to the one that I did. And I like it so much so that I think I could do this full time. And so I took the leap and joined the faculty here back in the fall of 2011. So I'm now in my 7th year of teaching. And I came here with 15 years of experience in pro and college sports. I certainly recognize the importance of experiential learning in my career path because it opened every door that I walked through along my journey. And having hired interns and employees along the way, I knew the importance of experiential learning and getting our students connected with the industry if we were going to have a successful program. So let me transition into how I started to do that. That was an important part of teaching for me, was connecting our students with the industry and developing experience-based projects for them. And it all started, I'll take you back to 2011 and 12, my first academic year on campus, and it all started with a field trip program. So this picture was taken in the spring of 2012 in the atrium of the NCAA headquarters. I developed this field trip program where I thought I'll get a charter bus, I'll round up 45 students or so, and take them to Indianapolis so I can connect them with executives at the NCAA and the Indiana Pacers. We'll take facility tours, participate in question and answer panels with executives who have stories to share and career paths that they can introduce students to. So that was an eye-opening experience for a lot of students and an important first step in implementing what I saw as a plan to get students actively involved with the industry. And one of my favorite parts of looking back at this picture is thinking about where some of these students are today. Javi, you're not in this picture, are you? No. One of my former students here. A little bit behind, yeah. Javi knows a lot of these students. So there are former students in this picture who now work for the Memphis Grizzlies, the Iowa Cubs, the Cedar Rapids Colonels, Miami Marlins, Learfield Sports, Paragon Sports Marketing. They've gone all over the country and expanded our Hawkeye network in the sports industry. And 2 students in this photo actually ended up getting married. And I went to their wedding a couple years ago in Des Moines. And just to illustrate the power of these experiences of getting students off campus and connecting them with the industry, they had never been to Indianapolis before. And through the first couple of field trips I took to Indianapolis, they fell in love with Indianapolis and the sports community there. And they made the decision, once we get married, we're moving to Indianapolis, and that's where we want to work. He now works for the Indianapolis Colts, and she works for a sports commission in a county near Indianapolis. So this is a great example. They never would have known anything about Indianapolis and the opportunities available for them there. And just taking them and exposing them has helped open up a lot of doors for them along the way. So that was in the spring semester of my first year of teaching. I followed that up in the summer after my first year of teaching by starting our first practicum course in the sport and rec management program. And there's a good backstory behind this first course that starts with one of my colleagues who's sitting in the back there. So, Packy, wave your hand, yeah. So, Packy Moran back there and his wife, Anna Jensen, were at Ohio University at the time. And for those of you who don't know, Ohio University has the oldest and most respected sport administration program in the country. And Packy and Anna were preparing to take a group of Ohio University students to San Diego and do a 2-week immersive experiential learning process with the San Diego Padres. And I was fortunate. Packy was looking for a couple of partner schools, and he asked me to round up some Iowa students and bring them out there. So I got this group of, and one of my favorite stories, quick aside, 3 students from this photo now work together at the Iowa Cubs. So another great example of how networking begins and can begin at such an early level in their professional development on campus. You know, these students didn't know each other before we took this trip, and after spending 2 weeks in the dorms together, they knew each other better than they cared to. And now they're colleagues all these years later in Des Moines with the Cubs. So our students partnered with Packy's students from Ohio, as well as a smaller group of students from DePaul University in Chicago. And so they got to work with students from different schools, different faculty members from different programs on real-life projects for the San Diego Padres. Another quick aside I want to tell about this slide here. So you got to remember, I was a first-year teacher, and we had never done anything like this before. So, and to go to take a group to San Diego for 2 weeks, there's a pretty hefty course fee that students have to pay for that, to live in San Diego for 2 weeks and take the course. So in order to make finances as little of a hurdle as possible for those students who might want to participate, I actually got a University of Iowa van and drove them to San Diego and back at the end of the course. I will never do that again. But we formed some amazing friendships on that trip, as you can imagine, and it was an important step in order to be able to, when I was going around campus trying to recruit students to be a part of this first time ever experience, to be able to say, yes, there's a course fee, but you don't have to pay for a plane ticket out there, because I knew that that might end up discouraging some students from taking part in this experience. So fortunately, word got around that it was a good experience, and they were willing to buy plane tickets the next year. So when we were out in San Diego, I know this isn't easy to read, but this is actually the project that the San Diego Padres marketing and sales staff gave to the students in that first year. So they got a chance to do real-life market research for a Major League Baseball organization, trying to learn where San Diego residents spend their money, what motivates them when they're making those sorts of spending decisions, and then to develop creative ideas to encourage more San Diego residents to buy tickets and come out to games. And that's a real challenge for the executives in San Diego, because they're competing against the beach and the great weather and a million other things to do in San Diego other than sit in a baseball park. So the students spent 2 weeks diving deep into that research, developing creative recommendations, and then getting a chance to present their recommendations in a room like this to a large group of Padres executives. You can imagine how long-lasting the benefits of that has been for those students, applying what they've learned in the classroom, developing portfolio materials that they can take with them to future interviews. It was an incredible opportunity that I'm very grateful that Packy and Anna invited me to join them for. So that was the first year, how I kind of got the ball rolling in terms of connecting our students with the industry and developing opportunities for them to apply what they're learning in the classroom in real-world settings. I want to transition to talk a little bit about what these programs have become in the past 6 years. So I still do the field trip program. It started out the first couple years that I was on campus as just one spring trip to Indianapolis each year. And after those first 2 trips, demand became so great that I realized I needed to start doing 2 trips a year. So now I lead one at the beginning of each semester. And we've expanded far beyond Indianapolis. We've gone to Chicago, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Kansas City, Des Moines, and we've repeated some of those cities along the way. This has become a really important piece in the academic calendar for our students. And I could talk about this field trip experience all day, but nothing tells the story like a video that I want to show for you. This begins the multimedia portion of the show. When I come back from these experiences with pictures and videos, my wife turns them into fun videos that really tell the story of what our field trips are all about. This was from the field trip that I led in January to Milwaukee this year.
What are you guys most looking forward to on the field trip?
Updated Panther Arena.
I'm most looking forward to the Q&A with the Bucks executives.
But at the same time, we got to get people to come out. We got to do something.
Now, how can we find out? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, message boards, text messages, emails. So off to your right over there is the equipment staff, right? Guys who are in charge of getting all of the equipment ready for our players to go.
This is one of our program alumni here who now works for the Milwaukee Bucks and was hosting us during this trip. It's another one of our program alumni over there.
The business guys standing back here talking, doing whatever, and then there could be the kids that are actually interested in the game.
And now, introducing your Milwaukee Bucks.
There are 2 Iowa alumni on this panel hosting us at the Brewers.
What it would take to reward that, be in front of that.
You'll see there's a lot of all-inclusive areas in Miller Park over in right field, that ATI court. That's a unique one because you get to be on the field basically, behind the home run fence, so a cool area.
What was your favorite part of the field trip to Milwaukee?
I enjoyed learning and networking with the various sports industry professionals that we met with, especially the University of Iowa alumni.
I enjoyed learning about possible summer internships, as well as how...
I swear he was not reading off of a cue card there.
Already
Literally froze when the camera light went on.
My favorite part was getting to see the Milwaukee Admirals stadium and everything, getting on the ice and learning from all those guys like Charles and stuff, what they did to get to their positions and what they do and everything.
So, like I said, nothing can bring to life that experience like that, video like that. And as I indicated, as we were going through, our network of alumni has expanded over the past 6 years to the point where now just about everywhere I take a field trip, we've got alumni to host us. And you can imagine how inspirational that is for our current students to see, oh, he was just here on campus a couple years ago in my shoes, and now he's living the dream that I want to live. So that's, a fun story about the field trips. I said demand had increased, and so now I run one each semester. Demand is such that the last field trip I led was at the end of August to Chicago, just a one-day trip. And students literally started, you have to show up to register in person. And once the bus is filled, it's filled. Nobody else is going. And students started showing up at 5 a.m. for the office to open at 8 o'clock. The students literally wait out like it was a rock and roll concert in the 70s. It's awesome to see that sort of buy-in to the opportunities that they're getting here on campus. So the practicums have also expanded considerably. So Packy and Anna at Ohio University really opened my eyes to what was possible with practicums. And fortunately, after a couple of years of working with them out in San Diego, I was able to recruit them to our faculty here at Iowa. So our faculty has expanded, and we have more faculty who are interested in leading these sorts of hands-on experiences. So now Packy and Anna take our group of Iowa students out to San Diego. And I took what I learned from them and have developed a practicum with the Chicago Blackhawks. I have one that works with the Iowa Wolves basketball minor league team in Des Moines. And we have other faculty who lead experiences with the John Deere PGA tournament in the Quad Cities, the Iowa Speedway in Newton, Iowa, the Iowa Wild hockey team, the Iowa Athletics Department. We've got such a diverse menu of options now for students to choose from when it comes to getting experience that there's literally something for just about anything that a student might be interested in the sports management industry. So once again, to really give you the best idea of what goes on behind the scenes at the practicums, this is a video from the practicum that I just finished up in August with the Blackhawks. And during that practicum, the students first do a marketing and promotions project with the Cedar Rapids Colonels. And then we move to Chicago and spend 2 weeks working with the Blackhawks organization. So let me play that for you here.
To create a fun and eventful theme that will bring in fans into the game and that will fit their already filled promotional calendar.
Not a bad place to hold a 3 credit hour class in the summer, huh?
Especially focused on the idea of attention to detail.
So the students start out by getting event management experience working during the Blackhawks fan convention before they dive into their research projects. Who was in the Milwaukee video a moment ago, did the Chicago Practicum with me a couple years ago and is so passionate about this class, he comes down from Milwaukee to meet with the students every year. One of my favorite events during this experience is all of those alumni who now work in the Chicago sports industry come out to have pizza with the kids and network. Candid camera moment. Kids all surprised me. They autographed a goalie mask for me, which is why I have that silly headgear on. So you can imagine how impactful this experience is for students. And one of my favorite parts of this Blackhawks practicum this year is 2 students who had done the practicum in Chicago with me a couple years ago now work for the Blackhawks. So it serves as an opportunity for an organization like the Blackhawks to identify young up-and-coming talent that come back to them after graduation. And for our current students, going there and seeing somebody who, gosh, you were doing this practicum just 2 years ago, this could be me down the road. Wonderful potential mentors for our students. And I would really encourage you to come down after we're done here. I brought several examples of some of the work product that the students produce for these practicums because when they do their presentations, they leave behind a booklet that contains all of their research and their recommendations for later reference. And the quality of the work that the students are doing in just a little over a week's time is astonishing. In fact, a couple years ago when these booklets were handed out to Blackhawks executives before the students started their presentations, a couple of the executives leaned over to each other and said, "This is better than anything we do." So that was incredibly affirming for the students, as you can imagine. So these are a couple of the major initiatives that our Sport and Recreation Management program is involved in to get students connected with the industry in meaningful ways. There are many other examples, but I'd also encourage you, as we start to transition into this idea of how does this apply beyond sport management, There are many smaller scale potential opportunities for experiential learning. It doesn't have to be a full-blown 3-credit-hour course. It doesn't have to be a 2-day overnight trip to Milwaukee with 50 students. And I want to share an example of a smaller scale experiential learning opportunity that I give my students in my sport business class that involves negotiation over a hypothetical NFL free agent contract. So I'm sure many people are familiar with Nate Kading. Nate was a NFL player for many years, grew up here in Iowa City and came back to retire after retirement to Iowa City. And Nate and I put this project together, and he comes in for a couple days every semester to work with the students on it. And so once again, I have a fun short video for you to help show you what this project's all about.
One of my favorite classroom projects is the contract negotiation in my sport business practices course. I developed a negotiation hypothetical with the help of former NFL player Nate Kading, and Nate joins me in class each year to help teach it.
Jerry Jones would be a general manager owner of an NFL team. You might not be the next Major League Baseball player negotiating your contract, but somewhere along the line, you're going to have to negotiate for something. So this is a lot of fun because negotiate a contract. I got drafted the 2nd overall pick in the 3rd round, the 65th overall pick.
The class is broken into project teams with half of those teams playing the role of sports agent for the hypothetical player, and half of the project teams playing the role of general manager for the hypothetical team. The free agency signing period then lasts 2 weeks, and during that time, students may negotiate in and outside of class.
And maybe the past, like if you average out his last 2 years of sacks, and you said it kind of matches up with like top linebackers, but still for that. If that's something to be looking to do.
So you're thinking like a 1 or 2 year contract?
At the end of the free agency period, students submit the terms of any contracts that were signed, and Nate returns to class to help critique the outcomes in each negotiation.
There's where you negotiate, your first negotiation is actually amongst yourselves, amongst your own team, before you go negotiate the actual contract. Did anybody else have that dynamic play itself out where there was some dissension amongst the group?
You said 5 years, 55 million, something like that. Did you just present it as here's a number? Thanks to Nate and my fall semester students for another great negotiation project.
So again, that's in a more traditional classroom setting here on campus. And it just involves Nate coming in for, an outside expert coming in for a couple days during the class, during the semester. And that comes after I've assigned them this book on negotiation. So they read the book and, answer questions from the book. But you can imagine how much more this information resonates with them and how long it lasts with them after they've applied it in an exercise like that. And they've had somebody like Nate come in who they have to perform well for, or he's going to say, hey, you really got fleeced there in that deal. Nobody wants that. This is an example of the kind of feedback that I get all the time from former students. Zach graduated a couple years ago, and he now works for a Cubs minor league team in Florida. And he saw that I was recently doing this negotiation project with my class. And to this day, he talks about that was one of my favorite projects I still remember and still apply all these years later. So that kind of leads into this idea that I want to conclude with of how does all of this potentially apply elsewhere on campus? I've had a lot of colleagues across campus over the years hear about the field trips, hear about the practicums, and schedule meetings with me to say, how on earth did you do this? What's involved in this? I'm always happy to talk about that. And it's colleagues who see the impact that these sorts of experiences are having on our students in sport and recreation management, and they're thinking, how could we do something similar in whatever field somebody might be teaching in here on campus. And it doesn't always have to be, like I said, as grand as a 3-credit-hour class or a lengthy field trip. It could just be connecting with an expert in your area and getting them connected with students in a way that just helps students buy in more to what they're being presented with in the traditional classroom. And I'll say, as a faculty member here on campus, one of the other things I've really appreciated about the practicums especially is the opportunity for interdisciplinary collaboration. So one reason why the booklets that we produce for the Blackhawks and other executives look so good is because I recruit graphic design students to be part of the class. And that's because I have a friend and colleague in the art program who a few years ago said, gosh, you need a designer. If these students were working for an agency, they would be taking their ideas to a designer who would make them look 1,000 times better. And she was absolutely right. In this past summer in Chicago, I had 6 design students with us. And in fact, one design student who did the practicum a couple years ago is now a graphic design intern with the Blackhawks because of that exposure she got. So it's a great chance to collaborate across departmental lines on campus with other like-minded colleagues. And if you're not a faculty member, I would encourage you to think about, where does my expertise lie? Where's my passion? And how could I potentially benefit current Iowa students by sharing that passion and that expertise that I've built up over the years? Nate's a good example of somebody who, just through giving me a couple of days each semester, makes that assignment so much more meaningful to the students who are doing it. So think about what it is that you do, what it is that your company does, or what you're passionate about, and think about connecting with a faculty member on campus who teaches in that area. Can you find a like-minded professor on campus who you're able to develop some concept with, or have students come in for a job shadow, or think creatively. One practicum that I lead every spring semester now with the minor league basketball team in Des Moines came about because one of my former students got a job with that team in Des Moines, and she contacted me and said, hey, let's start a practicum together. Your students can come and work with me, and let's do this. And I never would have started that if she hadn't have picked up the phone and called me. So that's all that I had prepared to talk about. I would love to answer questions, but before I do, if anything I talked about intrigued you and you want to follow and learn more, I'm very active on Twitter. I also have a professional website. All the videos that you saw, plus additional videos, are on that website. I have a blog. I write about sports business issues and teaching issues and other issues, and post to that blog. And our sport and recreation management program also has a very active social media presence that gives you a chance to really follow along with what we're doing on a weekly basis in the program. So,
do you have a new Iowa email address?
I do. I'll be, yes. So Daniel Matheson, Daniel-Matheson at UIowa. Good question. Thank you.
It's not up there. That's why I was...
Correct. So I'm happy to share that. You're welcome to contact me via traditional routes too, like email. As traditional as email is, right? So yeah, I'd love to answer any questions that anybody might have at this point. Yeah.
One small one big. One small one is, I noticed that beautiful ring you're wearing. Is that a championship ring, and which one, and why that one?
Okay, so good questions.
And the second question, follow-up, will be if you can clarify the distinction between an internship and a practice.
Sure. Good. Very good question. So the easy question first. this is a 1999 World Series championship ring. It's my favorite design. So I have 4, obviously, because I was there for 4 years that we won. And this is just the one that I always pull out for special occasions like this with all of you. And it was also special because we were kind of named the team of the decade that year because we had won 3 World Series that year, and we swept the Braves in 4, and they were the other team that everybody was talking about might be the other team of the decade. So it has some special meaning there. A practicum versus an internship. So an internship is typically a student applying for something with a company, going out to work as an intern and getting academic credit for it, but more at a distance. Maybe the professor checks in with them periodically throughout the semester and gets reports back from them. The practicum and the program, the way we have it structured, is instructor-led. So when my students are working with the Blackhawks, I'm living in the dorms there with them in Chicago and going to the United Center with them to and kind of it's kind of a hybrid, and it's one step short of an internship with more instructor oversight and daily kind of coaching. So and Packy, you feel free to jump in because you've done a lot of these, but it's very much like being a coach, keeping them on track, bringing their attention to things that they may have overlooked, making sure that they're prepared when they have to face the executives. So much more instructor interaction in our practicums.
The only thing I would add is having the faculty oversight is important to the industry partner and allows the industry partner to give more of a 50,000-foot kind of overview type of project to a group as opposed to what they would give to an individual intern or a group of interns. And so the projects are just are slightly different. They're not necessarily, they don't necessarily fit in one certain job description like an internship would.
Yeah, good addition. And I'd also, when thinking about getting involved potentially with an instructor on campus who you might be able to work with on an experiential project, it's not just a one-sided, one-way transaction. It's not a charitable effort. The partners that we work with in our program find great value in the recommendations that the students make. And many of these recommendations that my students and other students have made in practicums have been adopted either all or in part by the teams that have received them. The Blackhawks tell my students every year at the start of the practicum, these projects are important to us, and we're very interested in having a fresh young set of eyes on them. And you spark ideas that we don't think of because we're stuck in this organizational mindset day after day. So there's a real opportunity for community members to benefit from the experience as well. Other questions?
Yeah. Focused heavily on professional sports in your examples. Do you go beyond that?
Yeah, good question. So we've got a practicum that works every semester with the Iowa Athletics Department also. We have a new practicum that's working with the Iowa Games. I don't know if you're familiar, but the Iowa Games is a recreation-based competitive sports organization that hosts a lot of different activities throughout the state.
What they are doing.
So with the athletics department here on campus, have you been to a football game or a basketball game at Carver Hawkeye? So if you go to Kinnick Stadium on Saturday, you're going to see some students at strategic points throughout Kinnick with bright green shirts. Packy, is that right?
It's an
neon greenish, bright shirts that say, "How can I help?" Right? Those are our students who are in the Fans First Practicum. So they work most directly with the event management staff to provide excellent customer service, enhance, provide additional support for the event management staff to help fans in any way they might need it. And it's been a very successful initiative between the athletics department and our program. Yeah, Packy.
There is a strategy component to that as well. Like
Oh, yeah.
out to the to not only the event management but also a couple levels up within the athletic department. I don't know if any of you have been to a game this year and experienced the different queuing system on the central concession stand on both the east and the west side. That came out of this is the third year of Fans First. That came out of the first fall, and we're just being able to implement that this football season. Some mixed results, but mostly so.
Yeah, great example. Yeah,
And you
John.
lasted 6 years in your first job and 9
Yeah.
in the second.
Yeah.
I certainly hope that you last longer here at the university. You've been a great addition and
Thank you so much.
need a new challenge someplace. But also, what is the degree they come out with then?
A Bachelor of Arts in Sport and oh no, my gosh, I misstated. A Bachelor of Science in Sport and Recreation Management. Our master's degree is a Master of Arts. Through the College of Liberal Arts, yep. Sport and Recreation Management. There is not an application process, so students can just declare directly. And we have a lot of, more and more students are declaring before they've even gotten to campus. When I came here in 2011-12, I estimate we had about 70 students maybe in the program. Today we have about 520 in a little over 6 years. So there are a lot of elements that have fed into that, but it's been explosive growth, and that's one reason why we have many faculty members here now. Yeah.
What all do they do besides the ones that you mentioned, like the Blackhawks with the Practicum stuff? What else do they do, and have you tracked the success rate? Do most of them get jobs?
Yeah, so one thing that I always tell parents and students and others who are curious about placement is there's never a shortage of opportunities in the sports industry for students who have an appropriate work ethic, understand that it's not about being a professional fan, and because we do get students who arrive thinking, gosh, I love football and I'd love to just watch football all day for a job, and that's sometimes through self-selection they end up going into something else that's a little more traditional. But I actually just wrote a piece on my blog about this about a week ago. This idea of if students have the certain characteristics that the industry desires, there is always room for new employees. And that could be in professional team front offices, college athletics departments, and an area, it's not my area of focus in terms of teaching and professional experience, but we also have a percentage of students that are interested in recreation. And so we have students who work in campus and community recreation in different roles. But a lot of students are finding opportunities in sales. That is becoming a growing area for teams to hire in because of the intense demand to just increase revenue. So several students that I identified in those videos are involved in sales jobs, and it offers a chance to move ahead quickly in their careers if they are successful at it. So one of the great things in terms of placement about our faculty and the experiential learning is any sport management program can just put the students in a position to be competitive and be successful when they graduate. Taking them out to meet with industry partners and learn about internships that they can apply for. We get them to that point, and then they've got to perform when they go into that interview and they're competing against 75 other applicants. They have to make sure that their resume is spell checked and all of those things. But the I lost my train of thought, sorry. But great question, yeah.
You answered it. I was curious about the recreation.
Yeah, we've had a lot of growth in the sport management side, but there's still, and Iowa's program, if you don't know, has a long history of developing very successful recreation managers.
I think like the wellness aspect of recreation could be a...
We have some students who go that route. We don't have, we're within the Department of Health and Human Physiology, so there are other majors that might be more specific to a student who wants to go into wellness. And Joe probably knows all about that. You know all of those students. But we definitely do have some who go that route. I remember what I was thinking about a moment ago. One of the benefits in terms of our ability to place students is the industry experience of our faculty. We're contacted constantly by executives with organizations saying, I've got this internship, I've got this job I need to fill, send me 3 great recommendations. So that's a really important component to the placement process. We teach classes, we lead experiences like this, but we also spend a lot of time on the phones and email connecting our students with people in the industry who have jobs for them.
Yeah, I just want to build on that point. That it was great for you guys because when I graduated from the program in 2015, I was like, I'm going to take a couple weeks off before I start job searching. And I remember I was on vacation in Tennessee and I got a call from the Dayton Dragons, the Dolphins, the Miami Dolphins, Washington Nationals, Nashville Predators, Indiana Pacers gave me a call as well. I had a choice to go anywhere, and I didn't even have to apply, so it was great, and they heard my name through this program. Yeah, I actually got a call a couple weeks ago for the San Francisco 49ers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They need somebody to help sell tickets out there.
Yeah. I turned down the cup right before I took the job here at the foundation, and they won the World Series. So
Javi's one of our star graduates. Other questions? Great questions. All right. Oh. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all for joining us again, and one more round of applause for Dan. A great speech. So earlier, as I said, I encourage you all to visit our Hawkeye Lunch and Learn website. We've got another great lineup of speakers coming in the fall, and thank you for coming again, and have a wonderful day.